All right. The Sort of Sports podcast presents The Big Salad.
If it was a regular salad, I wouldn't have said anything. But you had to have that big salad!
Hosted by the one and only Quinn Maseko.
Thank you, George. And thank you, Ryan. On tap for today's podcast, we're going to discuss the NCAA men's basketball tournament, flip over to the NCAA women's basketball tournament, as today is Selection Monday on ESPN, then hit a brief NFL stint, and finish out with some happy time, which you'll come to find out what that is later on in today's podcast. So, to begin today, we're going to discuss past weekend's conference tournaments in men's basketball. And for this segment, we're going to call it Party Like It's Blank, because just like the Prince song, Party Like It's 1999, we're going to party like it's 1991 today to begin, with Alabama taking home their first SEC men's tournament title. And then over to the ACC, Georgia Tech took home their first ACC tournament title since 1993. Texas, their first ever Big 12 tourney title and this year, but their last conference tournament title was won in 1995. Illinois won the Big 10 the first time since 2005. Georgetown with the big upset of Creighton, first conference tournament title since 2007. And Oregon State, the Beavers, as Bill Walton said during that whole game on ESPN, they won their first ever Pac-12 conference tournament title. Ryan, which conference tournament winner was more impressive in their run over this past weekend?
I think there's a team we're really going to talk a lot about on this podcast, and that's probably Illinois. And I don't know if they were the most impressive in their game. It was a very close game. Being Big Ten fans ourselves, we watch a lot of Ohio State, Michigan State, Illinois, those teams. So we're really going to pay attention when they go head-to-head. And I think that Illinois-Ohio State game, I know a lot of people, it was right before the selection show. A lot of people were tuned in for that game. And it was a really close game. And I thought Ohio State played really well. And what was more interesting to me with Illinois was that they didn't play well, and yet they still won. And I almost found that more impressive, to the point where even when Ayo DeSumo and Kofi Coburn, their two best players, are having pretty not good nights for them. Ayo DeSumo shot about 6 for 15. They still come out with a win over a really good Ohio State team. So to me, even though they played badly, it was more impressive to just speak to the nature of this Illinois team and how they had Georgie, I don't even want to try to butcher his last name, step up, and Williams, who was hitting the deep threes. Like, we're going to talk about Illinois, I know, a lot more throughout the podcast, but that was one that really stuck out to me, along with Georgetown. I think Georgetown, used to be a huge basketball school, and I think Patrick Ewing, it's impressive that he got on that win, and I think they're an interesting team going into the tournament, definitely worth talking about. And Alabama's no shock. We've been talking about them all year as a big title contender, Final Four contender. So to me, Illinois sticks out because of almost just showing how good that team is. And Alabama, Texas, we knew those were coming. Georgetown's really the big surprise. And side note, a party in 2021 is really not as good of a party in like 1991. So Oregon State, we're sorry.
This is true to those Beaver fans out there listening. I have to agree with my colleague. Illinois was very impressive this weekend. And just for a little fact here, the last time Illinois won the Big Ten tournament title, they went all the way to the championship game in 2005, but lost it. So is that a little bit of a predecessor here for this year's tournament? I'm going to have to flip over and say Alabama was the most impressive team this weekend because of what Nate Oates has built there the last 2 seasons, I believe. He came from Buffalo, high-powered offense there. He brought that along with him to Alabama. Finally got some more high-profile recruits, trying to make it not just a football school, but maybe a basketball school as well. And they also beat a heated rival in LSU in their tournament title game, where they had some pregame fireworks there between some managers and some players. And I thought he was able to weather the storm, and a little tit for tat there at the end with the last second shots. So I think that this 2 years building, since there was no tournament last year for Nate Oates, that he's really impressed the tournament committee, and that's why he was rewarded with that number 2 seed. I was actually hoping they got a number 1 seed in this tournament, knocking off Michigan, as Michigan's went into a little bit of a tailspin, which we'll talk about a little bit later.
It's actually really interesting you say that about the Alabama-LSU thing. Did you notice before the game where they showed, you've seen this before, and they showed the LSU-Bama SEC title game from football 2 years ago? Mm-hmm. I thought that was really cool. They showed Joe Burrow, obviously, and they showed Tua going at it, and then they had against, I'm trying to think, what is it, Smith? It's Smith, isn't it? The big guy for LSU, Smart. Smart's one of the big guys for LSU. That's his name. You're shrugging your shoulders. You're not 100%
I don't know SEC football that well. So.
Well, they had some guys that they were showing, and I just thought it's really interesting how this year's been really shaking up college basketball. Big Ten, you have long been a big believer in that the Big Ten is the best basketball conference.
It has. Yes, the Big Ten, in my opinion, at least since 2000, has been the best men's basketball conference in the NCAA. I mean, obviously, the Pac-12 should be, because it's coined the Conference of Champions, but it's really only because UCLA's got all the championships.
It's just because John Wooden dominated in the 70s and 80s, yeah.
Thanks to Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and also who was actually known as Lou Alcindor back then.
At the time, yeah.
And Bill Walton later on in John Wooden's career. I would say I could debate the Big East in the 2000s as well, and then when they broke up into the American Athletic Conference, they took a nosedive. People argue the ACC, but it's only been better because they got the 4 top teams from the Big East. But I do think the Big Ten, it's deeper than ever this year. I think it has a good chance to get at least one team to the Final Four, and hopefully bring home a championship to the Midwest the first time in 21 years.
I mean, the ACC really is just the Duke UNC show most years. Mm-hmm. You get
with a little flair of Virginia.
Yeah, you get those NC State random runs, but they're not ever a Final Four team. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I think ACC usually gets the most teams in overall, but that doesn't mean that they really go as far. So that's the thing with a lot of Big Ten teams. You see teams like Michigan State and Ohio State and Wisconsin consistently putting together Sweet 16 and Elite 8 runs, whereas I remember 2 years ago, Duke was the best team in the country, number 1 ranked going into the tournament, and they lost to Michigan State, your favorite team, in the Elite 8.
Team. Yes, I'll put a plug in for Sparty here, because 2 years ago, when Michigan State, they beat Michigan for the 3rd time that afternoon in the Big Ten tournament title game. And they gave them a 2 seed with Duke just to have that matchup between Zion and Cassius Winston. Instead of giving them the 1 seed in the West, and they gave that to, I think Michigan, I believe.
Yeah,
Michigan was a 1 seed that year, and I don't know how they deserved it.
No, Michigan was I think Michigan was a 2 seed.
He was the 2 seed.
Because they ended up making it to the Elite 8.
Against, I think Gonzaga was still there.
Yep.
So Gonzaga was still there in the West, but I thought, personally, my team, Sparty, should have got the number 1 seed there, but we can't hash that out 2 years ago, because that's probably be that game, that Michigan State Duke game's got to probably be one of my favorites to watch at all time. And my dad, who's one of the biggest pessimists when it comes to sports, he's like, we get down by 10, first half, it's over. And I'm like, no, it's not. I said, we got Cassius Winston, and Cash came through, and that was a big win, big Tourney win. But yeah, I agree. The Big Ten has more perennial, yeah. Yes.
Well, and I think teams. A big part of that, and just a side note, that really upset me when Michigan State won, because I was really enjoying the entertainment of watching NBA basketball in college with Zion and RJ Barrett. Yeah, it was a pretty good time just watching it.
RJ had to make that free throw, and he couldn't make it. He missed one.
It was like an NBA team. It was like the Rising Stars team against an amazing college team. Mm-hmm. It's like you and I've talked. You can never count Izzo out. Doesn't matter who he's got. He just needs one guy. Mm-hmm. He just needs one good guy.
And if you don't know your calendar, it's January, February, Izzo, There's no March. It's Izzo. Welcome to East Lansing here in Cardington. But
what I was going to say is I think a big part of, and we're going to talk about more of this when we get to the tournament, is that the Big Ten, I think, out of the most competitive conferences, they do by far the best job of retaining guys for multiple years. They're not a one and done.
Not one and done.
They're the only team that even comes close would maybe be Michigan or Michigan State, but even Michigan State, Cassius Winston could have went to the NBA as a sophomore, but he stayed. So and Miles Bridges, didn't he leave as a junior? He left as a senior.
After a sophomore season.
He left after a sophomore
season. Now,
I think Jaren Jackson was one and done.
He left one and done. But that team,
that
Syracuse 2-3 defense got to them that year, they should have.
If Miles Bridges and Jaren Jackson Jr., I don't want to turn this into the Michigan State show all of a sudden, but
I'm okay with that.
If Jaren Jackson and Miles Bridges stay for that next season, and your team is Winston, Jackson, Bridges, and
Langford and Ward
Tillman, and then who would your center be?
Probably Nick Ward.
That's a national championship team.
Yeah,
that team beats Texas Tech and beats Virginia.
Yep.
That team's
and
crazy.
They should have beat Texas Tech. That defense they had that year was great.
Texas Tech's defense?
Yes.
Texas Tech was an incredibly good team.
Yeah, their best team under Chris Beard. Far out for now.
Well, that's what he's known for, is those scrappy defenses.
That scrappy defense.
And another thing, and that's what I was going to say with Illinois, and that's what I was going to say with Ohio State. You and I are going to talk about how we think Illinois and Ohio State are both really good teams. We both prefer Illinois. And their three best players. Kofi Cockburn could be drafted in the first round this year. Maybe potentially early second round. But I think he's going to stay. It seems like he's staying. That's what the reports are saying, is that he's not declaring yet. I'm guessing he'll leave next year because he's going to get a lot more eyes on him in the tournament. I'm guessing Io DeSumo might leave, though, because there's a pretty good chance he gets drafted relatively high. He's a junior.
Okay.
So,
DeSumo, I think I can see that being a decision where they both make it together. If they both come back or they both go.
That's a good
I think that's where it's going to be.
But I'm saying this team, we're talking... I think we're going to talk pretty soon about how we think Illinois might be the best team in the country. And they got Andre Curbelo, who's a freshman, who is their third best player. He is arguably their most important. He's their X factor to me. He's so good defensively. He brings the energy. And he doesn't really shoot that often from deep. But I don't think he shot a single three against Ohio State. But I think it was Grant Hill on the broadcast who was saying, he's been shooting better from deep. I would like to see him shoot it. And he didn't. And I'm thinking, if he's open in a tournament game, I feel like Curbelo, because he doesn't shoot much, those guys who usually don't shoot, they end up making it in those clutch moments. So, Curbelo, I want the ball in his hands. He had some really great takes against Ohio State where he just got to the rack and no one could stop him. He's really good defensively. And then Cockburn really surprised me where not a good free throw shooter, but in overtime, he went 4 for 4. And I was like, well,
he was 3 for 9 up until that point.
Exactly. And I'm like, that is really impressive. They just have this clutch factor to them. And, Io DeSumo, we can talk all day about how he probably shouldn't have shot that 3 to call the game. He should have drove in.
Correct.
And same thing as Michigan with Smith.
Right. Both those times. I don't understand why you're not forcing the issue. Listen up here, kids. Okay? If you have a last-second play and you got the ball in your hands, you're not all Steph Curry. Don't settle for the 3. Go in, either get a pull-up, a 15-footer at the elbow, or try to drive to the basket and draw a foul and make the referee force the issue there.
As much as I love Io DeSumo, the Lone Ranger, he's not Damian Lillard yet.
Or Zorro.
Yeah. He's not Zorro.
If you haven't missed that, Io DeSumo, against my team, Michigan State, a hard foul came across, hand hit his face. He's broken an orbital bone, I believe, there, and he's been wearing a mask. Well, the mask looks like either the Lone Ranger or Zorro. So if you need a plug for some old-timer TV, go tune into those shows and figure that out.
I've also seen some Batman takes, too.
Yes, some Batman takes. It needs to be a little longer for the Batman.
It does need to be a little longer.
Yes.
I prefer the Zorro and Lone Ranger comparisons. And the mask has really caught on. There's a guy for Baylor wearing one similar. Okay. But because I would assume...
Is it clear or is it
It's black.
Dark?
It's black.
Okay.
And I would assume it's really caught on because he's so good. So everybody's really going towards him, and it's becoming a big thing in Illinois. I really enjoy it. I really hope. I think, obviously, Curbelo's going to be back. Cockburn might be. DeSumo, hopefully. If this team stays together, I think we're talking about them as a Final Four team next year.
Yep.
And I like their coach.
Yep. Brad Underwood, we'll see if he can get the job done this time. But that's a good segue into our next topic. Is Gonzaga the consensus favorite here to win the tournament, or is Illinois dethrone them?
Well, I think it's kind of a matter of who you ask. The media is pushing Gonzaga because it's the same thing. I get flashbacks to really the first year where I was super in depth with March Madness and I enjoyed it was 2015. My heart was broken when Wisconsin lost to Duke. They were my team that year. Because you always ended up getting attached to different teams. And I really liked Frank the Tank and Sam Decker and Nigel Hayes off the bench. That was a really fun team. And they beat the undefeated Kentucky. And at that time, of course, the media was all pushing a Duke versus Kentucky national championship. Because Kentucky was undefeated.
So, and it brings viewers.
The true blue teams, quite literally.
Yes, and plus, it's one of those, they're both those teams that are, no matter if you love them, they're a love or hate them team, and if no matter what, if you love them or you hate them, you're turning into that game to see what's going on.
Like Tom Brady. I mean, everybody tunes in to see Brady lose or Brady win.
Exactly.
So, personally, I don't like UNC, I don't like Kentucky, but Duke is the one I kind of like. I don't know how you sit as a Michigan State person. You probably don't like Duke. Michigan State usually battles it out with them a good amount.
Yeah, I usually I favor North Carolina better than Duke, which is kind of funny because I'm not a Michael Jordan fan, and he went. He was a Tar Heel. So
I guess my big thing is I'm not a big fan of Roy Williams. Like, he's good, but I just don't think he's not as good as Smith. He's not going to be as good as Dean Smith.
Well, I mean, nobody's going to be as good as Dean Smith.
Dean Smith's
iconic.
Dean Smith and like Wooden. Dean Smith and Wooden are like the two greatest.
Well, yeah. I don't know anybody else.
I don't think I can't name anybody. I mean, Valvano's got one of the best singular runs with NC State.
Yes.
And he's got one of the best quotes.
Yes, he
Survive
does.
in advance.
Yes, survive in advance.
So
I have no other college coaches on the top of my head that are.
I mean, if Izzo can get one or two national titles by the time.
He's already got one.
I'm saying one or two more.
Two more.
He's got one or two more.
But he's already got 8 Final Fours as well.
The Final Fours. He's so good in the tournament.
He is.
All right, we're getting distracted by Michigan State. We're getting distracted by Michigan State.
Go green.
Gonzaga is the one the media's pushing. Grant Hill was talking all about Gonzaga. And the guy who's with him.
Who, Bill Rafferty?
No, it was Clark Kellogg. Sorry.
Clark Kellogg.
Clark Kellogg on the selection
You're talking about
the selection
Davis.
Yes. Davis was pushing Gonzaga. They both had... It feels like this. You and I were talking about this when we filled out the official Big Salad bracket.
Which we will be revealing in a few moments here.
You and I were talking, you ask anybody, almost everyone has Gonzaga and Illinois either in the national championship or in their Final Four. I think everybody's pretty much agreed that those are the two, at least two of the top 4 best, and most people think one of them is winning the title. I checked ESPN today. Granted, we're only a day in of bracket picking. But it's something like 40% of people have picked Gonzaga for the national title, and like 17 or 18 has picked Illinois. I think, this is my exact thought. I think Gonzaga is a flawless team from a basketball perspective, but I think Illinois has that it factor, where it's like they can get scrappy and they'll just say, you know what, screw it, we're going for it. And I don't think Gonzaga has that guy to me. Like, I think Gonzaga runs like a solid 8-man rotation. Illinois has got guys off the bench that I trust. Williams and Georgie were arguably their 2 best players against Ohio State. Both off the bench. And that's nothing against their other starters. It's just they got guys who say, we're doing this. We're going for it. And the other thing with them is they hit the hot streak right at March. And that's a big factor.
Yep, that's what you need.
That's what you and I were talking about when we were filling our bracket about Creighton.
Yep, Creighton, they're in a tailspin right now. They got destroyed by the Hoyas. Also a little plug-in for Patrick Ewing. Patrick Ewing, former New York Knick. They have the Big East tournament in Madison Square Garden. And everybody kept asking him for his ID. This is Patrick Ewing. Patrick Ewing, the Hall of Famer from New York. And I just thought that was funny. I thought that was really funny.
I didn't even hear about that. That's hilarious.
Yeah, they kept asking for his ID. And I was watching one of my favorite sports shows, Pardon the Interruption, on ESPN. And they said, he just needs to go up and tell him, I'm Patrick Ewing. My jersey's up there. I don't need an ID. And that's true. So, but... I think I'm going along with Ryan's perspective here. I think Gonzaga is definitely a Final Four team. I think they're there, but there's an added pressure you have when you are undefeated. I mean, you're trying to be perfect. You're trying to do everything perfect.
And
You're
everyone
only meeting your record. So.
Everyone's gunning for you.
Right.
Like
Everybody's
Illinois
coming
doesn't
after
have
you.
that.
Right. And you don't want to and Gonzaga also doesn't want to get bounced out in the first round, well, not the first round, because I hope they don't have another Virginia UMBC feat. But hopefully, I mean, in the second round, you don't want to get bounced out there because it's just the perception's not good on that because obviously didn't play anybody. But they have played people. They beat up on Iowa big. They beat Kansas. They beat North Carolina, even though North Carolina went down to a lower level than they usually play. But I think Gonzaga's got some resume wins there that hopefully will power them to the Final Four.
I guess to put a nice button on it, I watched Gonzaga versus BYU and thought they beat a decent team. I watched Illinois versus Ohio State and thought Illinois beat a great team while playing some of their weaker basketball. So that's really how I feel. Where it's like, Illinois just got something there.
Right.
It feels like it's going their way.
Right.
And it feels like the dance is going to be there. So that's
The
so I
dance
think
is gonna be
for
fun.
Big Ten people, a lot of people I know are picking Illinois. A lot of people I know are thinking Illinois' fake. I mean, not Illinois. Gonzaga's fakers, but the national media at large is going to pick Gonzaga
pick the number
because
one
they're always
overall.
going for that favorite because they're undefeated and they want to be the next. People always want to be living through history.
Right.
That's why people are always saying that the new guy's the GOAT because they want to be in the moment of the greatest of all time. And so I think that's really what's happening here. I mean, maybe we're wrong. Maybe Gonzaga does win it, but I just think there's holes there that I think they're flawless, but I think they can just get beat by a team that wants it more because they've already got their undefeated badge.
Right.
So.
Exactly. They made it through the regular
Illinois is
season,
just Big Ten champion off an overtime game.
Right. You're only as good as your last performance, as somebody told me once. So, anyway, moving on. With Illinois winning the Big Ten tournament and Ohio State being runner-up, do you think Michigan really deserved to be that number one seed?
See, here's the thing. If you don't make Michigan the one, it becomes even harder to pick who is the one. Because it felt like they were obviously a one before they lost to Ohio State. So then it becomes the issue is Bama the one? And I know you and I both talked, we think Bama should have been a one. Or is Ohio State the one? Because Ohio State beat Michigan. So it's a real issue here. And so I think it's the right move. But I think it's definitely questionable, but there's really just no better alternative.
Yeah, if you look at the 2 seeds here for this year, you got Iowa, Ohio State, Houston, and Alabama to take Michigan's spot. Obviously, it's not going to be Houston, weaker conference, non-Power 5.
Exactly.
Iowa, they're kind of in a tailspin right now, like usual at March time around. They always are good regular season, never good in the tournament. And then you got Ohio State. Well, Ohio State evenly matched with Michigan, even though we can't really truly say Michigan played. They were the best team in the Big Ten regular season because they had that month-long COVID pause.
Exactly.
And then you have Alabama left. Alabama, I think, deserved it because they won the SEC regular. They won the SEC tournament, contrary to Michigan, who didn't win their respective conferences tournament. So that's why I think Nate Oates and his team and the Crimson Tide deserved to be that fourth number one seed.
Now, this is obviously a big old what if, not really, this isn't really conspiracy theory. This is a lot of throwing stuff around, but in my book, you put Arkansas as the 3 with the Michigan-Bama if you're going to keep Bama the 2. And you put Texas over with Ohio State and Baylor. Because I think Texas is much better than Arkansas. And I think it really sucks when you're Bama. You got to play Texas. And I think Texas is a good team. I mean, I saw Clark Kellogg took them in his Final Four.
Yep, Matt Coleman, he went off. Every time in that Big 12 championship, tournament championship game, every time Oklahoma State tried to make a run. Those Cowboys behind Cade Cunningham tried to make a run. They get it down to 4 or 5. And next thing you know, Matt Coleman's hitting the 3. And he's taking over. He's getting an and 1. And that's who they're going to be riding on, hitting the momentum in the backs of Matt Coleman there.
I don't love what I see when I watch Texas, but every time I watch them, I notice something, and I'm like, that's really good. Like, they're doing good things. They're building a better basketball program, whether or not it's this year or next year when they make it to the Final Four. I mean, they're a scary team. You do not want to play them in the Elite Eight. Or Sweet 16. They're a bad team to play right before the Final Four because they play good defense, they're scrappy, and they got guys who are moment. They're gamers. They got gamers.
Yeah, you have gamers.
So,
but here's the bigger question is, do you think Shaka Smart looks better with the afro or the shaved head?
I kind of enjoy froze. I think it's just kind of fun.
I just can't believe he had all that hair and he wasn't bald and he was spending all that time shaving his head. It had to be at least every other day. But, all right, back to a little bit of Illinois. What reminds me of Iota Sumo and Kofi Coburn are my Spartans, Cassius Winston and Xavier Tillman in 2019. I see in Io part of Cash where does anything for his team, and when it's time for them to go on a run or need a score, their backs are on him. Kofi Coburn, big, solid defender, rebounder, reminds me of Xavier Tillman as well. Do you possibly see any of that resemblance in that and those two fighting Illini?
I definitely see what you're saying. I think it works. To me, it's like you took Xavier and Cassius and brought them down to Buffalo Wild Wings and let them eat there for hours because Kofi Coburn is about an inch and like 30 pounds bigger than Xavier Tillman.
Right.
So
I guess that's what they're different assets.
Yes.
Because Tillman was with speed compared to what Coburn is with size.
Coburn, to me, I'm not trying to overhype him, but he's the closest thing I think we've seen to Shaq since Shaq in college, which is he's unguardable. I don't think there's any team, and this is a big reason I think they're winning the national championship. We can talk about it more later. Is I don't think there's any team that can stop him.
Right.
He's a monster.
They can't. And what boggled my mind yesterday is why, even though Ohio State had umbrella coverage on him, basically the help defense was there from two guys around Kofi being guarded closely. I don't understand why they didn't send it into the big fella, as Bill Rafferty would say. I'm like, you got to send it into them. Get your puppies organized. But I think, he's definitely unguardable. And if Io is going and they get some of their role players and Granderson and Miller and Frazier hitting, contributing their 5 to 10 shots, Illinois does become unstoppable.
Io sometimes pulls out like these, I want to say Jamal Murray of last year's NBA playoff shots, where it's just like, he made that? Where there was 1 or 2 yesterday where he just pulled up in the middle. No one takes mid-range pull-ups. No one does that. And he did it like 3 or 4 times and drained it each time. And one of them was at a pivotal moment. And I was like, oh my gosh, like he is so special.
That's what that part is. What reminds me of Cassius Winston because he's got that special factor. He carries the team, and whenever they need Io to get hot, it's just like Cassius gets hot at the right time.
Neither of them are afraid to say it's not my time. It's Kofi's moment. Or, Williams is open.
Right. They choose to take over the game when they need to.
Exactly. They're both team players, and I think a lot of that's coaching. To me, if we're going to boil it down, they're just beefier. They're big boy versions of Cassius and Xavier.
Yeah, exactly.
Cassius and Xavier, neither of them are tiny boys either, though. They're a lot of big boys.
No, but
kind of, we could also make a comparison. I remember thinking about this with Xavier and Cassius as Conley and Oden from Ohio State.
Yes. Back in 2006, 7?
2007, I think it would be the year. Another great big man guard duo, but that's a lot more defensively than offensively.
Right.
That was just another one of those duos.
Another one of those analogies you can make. But, well, one of the bigger topics here this tournament, and it's been a while since we've seen this guy back in the coaching box, is Rick Pitino, the infamous coach from Louisville who was banned because of violations in the mid-2010s. Now he's back at Iona, a small mid-major school. Ran it back with them. They were number 1 seed in their conference, obviously conference regular season champs. And then they came in and won their conference tournament. So, do you think Rick Pitino can put Iona on the map?
I was watching their game and I was like, I'm going to give them an upset. Yeah. And then they got put with Alabama. And I was like, never mind. So that's really my wrap-up where I would say they'd win, but they're playing one of the teams I think is one of the best 4 teams in college basketball.
Do you think Pitino can get some,
Recruits?
I wouldn't say 4 or 5-star recruits, but get some maybe 3, maybe a 4-star recruit here and there over there at Iona?
I think they could steal 4.
Yeah, I think it's possible.
1 or 2, 4, especially in the pipeline.
Yeah.
I don't really know where Iona is, though.
I don't even know either. I guess we're going to have to look that up. Where is Iona?
Well, while Quinn's checking, I do have something to say. I saw a really funny tweet. Somebody goes, anybody else realize that Louisville's sitting at home right now and Rick Pitino's in the tournament? So how funny is that?
It's in New Rochelle, New York. That means it's in the city.
Maybe we can steal some of Syracuse recruits because I do not think Syracuse is a very good team at all this year. So
no, Syracuse is not. And again, Jim Boeheim's carrying the weight there to get them in the tournament.
Yeah, his son's got to carry the team.
Yes, Buddy Boeheim. But yeah, I think Rick Pitino, good coach. Don't be trying to pay recruits to get there this time, Rick Pitino. Okay? Stop illegal recruiting. But anyway, moving on. So, before we get into the bracket predictions, do you think the bubble in Indy is going to work for the NCAA tournament, or will COVID derail March Madness?
I am slightly terrified because they're testing so much of a, oh my gosh, I'm trying to think of a team that'd be on a big run. Texas is on this really hot run, and they just beat Alabama, oh my goodness, and then they get 2 positive tests, and then what happens? So I'm terrified of that, but I think it's the NCAA tournament. So I think it's going to be exceptionally strict. And here's the thing. With college sports, it's like Nick Saban said years ago. He's like, I can't tell the guys for my NFL team to go home and go to bed by 9 o'clock because they're all making more money than I do. With college players, you're kind of in charge of them. So you can say, you can have security guards outside the doors and say you can't leave and stuff like that. So I'm sure it'll be fine. I obviously don't want to be like prison for them. We don't want Shawshank Redemption starring the Iowa Hawkeyes. But Luke Garza starring as Tim Robbins' character. Luca Garza. But I think it'll be all right. I'm terrified of the possibility. The ultimate bracket bust would be a positive case.
Yes.
But I think it'll work. The NBA pulled it off. It went fine.
Right.
And especially, what I find is exceptionally fun is as long as you have 5 players who are ruled okay, we're good.
Right.
You know how legendary it would be if a Winthrop, you and I are both high on Winthrop, Winthrop runs 5 guys and gets an upset.
Exactly.
And they run the whole game. That would be amazing. So, I'm cautious, but I'm not really. I think it'll be okay.
Well, what I'll take to the great words of Tony Kornheiser, co-host of PTI, he said, the NCAA is doing to March Madness what the Big Ten did to Ohio State for football. They're going to bend the rules and try to keep as many teams in as possible. And try to make sure that no team gets disqualified. Obviously, they have 4 replacement teams, and yes, Duke did not make any of those, which is fantastic. And I'm going to say just the opposite reasoning for what you said, Ryan, is that the college kids, I feel, especially in this pandemic, they felt, because they're the young people, they're kind of invincible, and they kind of don't want to be told what to do, that I can see them breaking the bubble more, even though we see the paid athletes maybe having more of a luxury to do that. But I feel like the paid athletes and all the bubbles they've had for NBA and NHL, that they've been able to stay in and keep contained. So I guess the biggest thing is now is for all the teams, got to get past the test this week, get in there, get in that hotel, and you just got to hunker down. Don't be trying to go out unnecessary or anything, because that's kind of the worst. That'd be the worst thing if your tournament run gets derailed by COVID-19 this year. So, but
Let's pray against it. We got to have Winthrop get that big win.
that's right. Gotta get Winthrop. All right. Well, moving on to the official.
Big salad bracket.
Yes, and Ryan will be putting it up on the screen during the video. We're just going to run through the highlights here. If you look in the West region, we picked Gonzaga to go all the way to the Final Four. And I think we couldn't disagree with the number 1 overall seed not getting to the Final Four.
I mean, they're not bad. They're an amazing basketball team. It's just I don't think they're the Olympians that we're being told they are. Jalen Suggs, though, might be. But I'm not sure about everybody else. And Mark Few might be. Mark Few might be. Mark Few's pretty great.
Yes.
But I do not think they are. They might be the most flawless team basketball, but I don't think they've got that it factor. So that's, I think, and you agreed.
Yeah. We had a little trouble on this game in the West in the first round. Creighton versus University of California, Santa Barbara. Ryan, very high on Creighton. I really wanted to take UCSB because I feel it's more about Creighton than how UCSB plays. Creighton is definitely on a down slope. I mean, they got destroyed by Georgetown. I think they're going to be down in the dumps, and that's going to aid to a possible upset. But we ultimately left it to a coin flip. Ryan called tails. It was tails. He got to go with Creighton. So,
We'll see.
Anything to say about the Blue Jays? Anything?
They were so good at the beginning of the year. I don't know. I just feel like they're good. And maybe that could derail us, but there's just something about a Creighton Gonzaga game in the, would that be second round?
In the Sweet 16.
Sweet 16. I feel like that's really likely. Either way, I'm not high on Virginia at all. I think I have, in my 2 main brackets, obviously for ESPN I filled out like 40, but for my 2 main brackets in actual leagues where I'm trying to win, I have Virginia losing to OU, which is risky, but I just got a feeling about OU, so I want to throw that in there. The Bobcats.
The Bobcats of Athens, Ohio.
Living in Ohio, you got to go with that OU.
Right. So, I was in favor of Virginia for the first round. I haven't questioned it yet, but that's just a brief highlight there. We both mutually decided to take the upset in the 7-10 matchup in the West. The VCU, the Rams, over the Oregon Ducks. Oregon kind of floundered. Isn't that kind of funny for being a Duck? Kind of floundered in the Pac-12 tournament. Didn't make the conference championship title. So I just think they're on that downturn kind of where Creighton's at as well. Probably what the biggest news is that Iowa winning their first game and getting upset in the round of 32. And maybe you want to hint on about why Iowa is going to be facing that early exit.
I mean, they're Iowa. Yeah, neither of us trust them. Luka Garza might be, a top 5, top 3 college basketball player right now?
Yeah.
He's amazing. Yet, I don't really like this Iowa team. I've watched them a lot, and I've seen them a lot, and they don't impress me. Like, they're good. Don't get me wrong, they're good, but VCU is a classic upset pick, where they don't play in a very good conference, so they're peed off, and they want to show everybody that I think they're what? They Colonial?
No, they're in the A-10.
The A-10. They want to show everybody that the A-10 is, legit, and, they play a fast pace. Really, fast pace and defense, perimeter defense, those are the 2 keys to a big upset. And having that it factor, and I think they got that. Granted, we both look like idiots, and Iowa could be in the Elite 8, but
they could.
I don't think it'll happen.
I don't trust Fran McCaffrey.
I don't trust them.
Fran McCaffrey might just throw another chair like he did a few years ago. So you never know what's going to happen with the Hawkeyes. But they're always a good regular season team and never good in the postseason.
You and I are almost... I think we're higher on every single Big Ten team except them.
Iowa.
You and I like Rutgers more. I'm in love with Rutgers.
Well, I'm not in love with Rutgers.
I'm in love with Rutgers.
I think Rutgers can pull a couple upsets. We'll talk about them
later
in the Midwest bracket. We're going to move over to, I'm going to go top left, bottom left, and top right, bottom right, according to the bracket here. We're going to go down to the East region. Got Michigan making it to the Sweet 16, but getting punched out by Florida State. What do you think about that?
I think it's a coin toss. but we went with Florida State because Florida State had all that COVID crap go on with them. So I feel like they're that type of team that's like, we got to show everybody our worth. And Florida State consistently has had success in the tournament. We've seen them get wins.
Yeah.
I remember a couple years back, they were in the Final Four.
Yes. Leonard Hamilton, former assistant coach at Kentucky back in the 80s, I believe. My grandpa, big Kentucky fan, he's from Eastern Kentucky. He is very high on Leonard Hamilton, so he thinks that Florida State, the Seminoles, are going to be making a deep tournament run.
And they're the tallest team in the country.
Yes, they are the tallest.
And, just because you're tall doesn't mean you can ball, but size does matter.
And you can't coach height either.
You can't coach height, yeah.
That's exactly right. So, the biggest one here probably is Georgetown upsetting Colorado, and that was your pick, Ryan, so you go ahead and explain that one too.
I mean, it's not really my pick, it's America's pick.
It's more like Cardington/Ashley, Ohio's pick over here.
Yeah, it's true. Almost everybody I know is picking Georgetown. I did look at the nation average. 65% of people are taking Georgetown. So it's probably the most upset game right now. It'd actually be more of an upset to see Colorado win right now.
Well,
and you like Colorado, but my thing with Georgetown is I like what they have going on. And I like what they're doing, and I like what Ewing's got going on. I just think you don't want to get in love with your Cinderella teams going to like Elite Eight, but I think they're a good team to get maybe to the Sweet 16 or round 2.
Right, and you know what I thought? I always try to keep my upsets and my
chalk.
Yeah, my chalk. I guess we'll call it that. My chalk even. So we got 4 5-12 matchups. I'm trying to pick 2 5s, 2 12s. I was more in favor of picking UC Santa Barbara instead of Georgetown winning a 5-12 matchup. Moving on, we definitely agreed that Sparty, my team, is going to be winning their first 4 game. Isn't that surprising that a Michigan State team is in the first 4? It never happened to Tom Izzo. Is going to be beating UCLA, the Bruins, one of the former Blue Bloods, and then beating up on the Mormons of BYU. And upsetting.
BYU's good, but I like the Michigan State team. I don't want to bet against Izzo. And I just think, I'm not saying they're like Elite Eight or anything crazy, but they're a good team.
Yeah. And I think it's hard for people to bet against the Big Ten this year since it's so deep and it's been tougher this year as well. So.
Well, did they beat Illinois when they played?
They did.
Automatic, that means they're beating BYU.
Yeah.
I love Illinois.
If you guys haven't paid attention the last couple weeks, Michigan State has the most wins against AP-ranked top 5 teams this season. They beat Illinois, Michigan, and Ohio State within a 14-day stretch, I believe. So they poured it on and in order to scoop in there for Izzo's 23rd straight March Madness. Moving on down, another 7-10 upset here, taking Maryland, another Big Ten team, over UConn. Maryland, just a tough team, big on defense. They hit well from the 3. If they're hitting, I think they're going to be fine. We'll see what happens. But moving on in that Elite 8 game, put forth Alabama and Florida State in the Elite 8, taking Alabama to the Final Four. I think we gave our reasons before why we think Alabama, under Nate Oates, is going to take a Final Four spot. In the South bracket, Baylor, number 1 seed, got them going all the way to the Final Four, which we had some disagreements about because we don't really know how good Baylor is, because we kind of think they're a little inflated. Their resume is a little inflated.
Yeah.
But I don't trust the Buckeyes. I don't. And I'm not a Buckeye fan, so that's why I'm going to say it. I just don't trust them at all to get in there and get to the Final Four. I don't trust Arkansas either, but that's my opinion. Now, we're really big on Winthrop, and they have Villanova in the first round. And I think a big reason that we're probably on that is they lost Gillespie.
Yep.
To an MCL tear, and was one of their leaders, and he's not going to be in there, and I think that's going to be a big hurt. But we have them going to the Sweet 16 facing Baylor. They're going to upset Purdue as well. I don't think Purdue's that good of a team either. They just have their tall guys. They got a 3-point specialist.
I think Purdue's pretty good, but I'm not in love with them either. So that's why we went that way. I mean, they're good, but they're not. So I think Ohio State Baylor game will be an absolute classic. We're talking about a hood classic.
A hood classic here, all right.
So I personally would take Ohio State, but Baylor's a faker for number one, and there's not really a better team to put as number one. Like logically, you got to put them as number one based off their record, but
right. They didn't win their conference.
They didn't even win their conference title. They lost
won
to
the regular season, but they didn't win the
Quick aside, Oklahoma State University. If you're gonna watch only one March Madness game, watch an Oklahoma State game if you're not worried about like championship, because most watchable teams for the. I'm sorry, I gotta go to my most watchables real quick.
He always going for the most watchables here on Sort of Sports.
It's like kind of my thing. Illinois and Oklahoma State are gotta be your two. They're like the most fun to watch. I can hear the Gonzaga argument a mile away, but I love the way Illinois plays, and Oklahoma State. I mean, it's like watching an NBA rookie game. You got Cade Cunningham out there, and then he's got a bunch of support. His supporting cast is underrated. I really like Oklahoma State. I really wish they were in Illinois' bracket. I'd put them farther.
Yeah, I thought they should have won that game, and like I mentioned before about Texas, Matt Coleman just kept responding to those runs made by Cade Cunningham and the Cowboys in the Big 12 tournament title game. But I do like the Cowboys. And
you and I were texting about the Oklahoma State game about
we
how good Cade Cunningham was. He's a good player.
Yes, he's a good player. So, couple games to note here in the South because we had some disagreement. The Texas Tech-Utah State game, Ryan reluctantly went along. I picked the Aggies of Utah State because I've seen them play a couple times, and plus they beat their conference champion, San Diego State, the Aztecs, out of California, twice before they finally lost to them by single digits in the conference title game. And I think they've shown some fight that they're worthy of a first-round upset against Texas Tech.
No, I mean, I know exactly what you're saying. I just like the way Texas Tech plays. So,
but I think Texas Tech relies too much on defense, and the name's basketball. You got to put the ball in the basket. That's the point of the game.
That's true.
So
that's true.
That's where I draw the line there.
I think what you're saying is probably right. I just remember 2 years ago watching Texas Tech be one of the best college basketball teams. So
yeah, Sparty.
Speaking of, randomly hit me. Remember back when Arizona got back-to-back 1 seeds when they had Larry Markkinen and then DeAndre Ayton?
Yeah.
Yeah, back in the good old days with Arizona being good basketball.
Yeah,
that's
and now
crazy.
Arizona, they went under all those scandals with Sean Miller. They said, we'll keep Sean Miller, but not getting any players out of that return.
Yep.
So, the next game that was some controversy in the South was the 3-14 matchup, Arkansas versus this tube of toothpaste here, Colgate. And Ryan here said the tube of toothpaste is going to beat
I
the
just
good old
like
state of
Colgate.
Arkansas.
I like Colgate. I think they're good.
Is that what you use every day?
No, I'm a Crest guy.
Oh, well then, look at his allegiance, folks. It's not even there in the bathroom every morning getting ready for school. I mean, it's ridiculous. But Colgate, you got any other reasoning other than being a toothpaste?
My reasoning is, toothpaste is probably the third best reason, but they got a good perimeter defense. They're coming out of the Patriot League, so they're kind of like, yeah, why not us? You know, They got that mentality.
Right.
And I think Arkansas is not very good. Mm-hmm. I think you and I have them losing in the second round or Sweet 16?
In the Sweet 16 against the Bucknuts.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't really like what Arkansas is going, and I like Colgate because they're really good perimeter defenders. Mm-hmm. They've lost, I think, 3 games overall this season. Granted, they don't play anybody notable.
Right.
But
no, they're 14-1. They've only lost 1 game this year.
They've only lost 1 game. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, they're a team that shoots well and plays really good defense on the perimeter.
Mm-hmm.
So I just think it's one of those teams we can see getting upset. They've got upset written all over them.
Right. It's hard to pick against the Patriot League because they've had Lehigh upset a couple times in the past 10 years. Mm-hmm. Mercer's upset Duke twice in the past 10 years.
Those guys are
Duke's
scrappy.
not in here. Yes, it's that little man just. You know, sometimes you feel like you got the big man that are elites, the big man team, and then you got the little men who are the non-Power 5, and they just get that little chip on their shoulder and just go right at those Power 5 schools.
Or in this case, a chip on their tooth.
Yes, exactly. But nothing else too exciting in the South. Move on to the Midwest. Illinois is our Final Four team here. Obviously, we're going to ride the wave with Sister Jean in the 8-9 game
Oh
between
my
Loyola
gosh.
Chicago and Georgia Tech because the Centurion hopefully is going to be there to watch Loyola Chicago.
I really, really, really wish Loyola Chicago wasn't in Illinois' bracket.
Or I'm fine with them being in there, but I'd rather they had been in the 7-10 game than the 8-9 game.
I'd rather have them ranked as 10th. I don't even, just get them out of Illinois' side.
Right.
They play Illinois in the second round.
Right. I mean, it's going to be, that's tough sledding right there.
And you and I love Loyola Chicago.
Yes, I do I love Sister Jean. She's the best. I mean, nothing like a 101-year-old nun. So Exactly. So, anyway, here's a star game here between the 5-12 matchup, Tennessee-Oregon State. Ryan wants to take the Beavers with Wayne Tinkle as their head coach, while I wanted Rick Barnes and the Tennessee Volunteers. And how about you give your reasoning behind you liking the Beavers?
Well, we ended up going Vols, but I just think the Beavers are another team that feels upset. It feels like an upset. They won the Pac-12. Kind of a shock. They're riding that momentum. They're getting hot right as March starts. And they just feel like they have, kind of like Loyola Chicago, where it's like they have that really mentality of we shouldn't be here, but we are.
Exactly.
So,
yeah, this team, I mean, the Beavers were picked last to be in the Pac-12 this year, 12 out of 12, and they ended up coming all the way back. I think they were I'm sorry, that's wrong. I believe they were 5th in the league in the regular season, and then they were able to come back and win that conference title game over Colorado, the Buffaloes. So, I think it'll be still an interesting matchup. I can't wait to see some of these matchups are just good matchups, even though you have a good pick you're rooting for.
Yeah.
They're just good matchups to watch because you never see them. You never get to see them.
Well, I'll be watching that Colgate game, baby.
That's right, Colgate.
I'll be rooting.
So, also another tough one next game down, and that actually in that same section of the bracket, Oklahoma State Liberty. We went with Oklahoma State, the Cowboys, but Ryan seems to have an affinity for the Flames.
I feel like maybe I'm picking too many upset teams, but I just like Liberty. I think they're another one like Colgate, where they got a really potent offense and they're really strong on defense, and that's basketball. I don't know why. I'm saying they shoot. If you are a good three-point shooting team and you defend the perimeter well, that's usually the signs of an upset team, because you can put a lot of points on the board while making them work it inside. So Liberty is another one of those teams I wish they were ranked differently. I would rather have them be 15 against take Cleveland State's spot and play them against Houston, because I think Houston is the worst 2 seed we have out of everybody. And yeah, I just really wish they weren't going up against you and I's kind of a favorite team to watch, Oklahoma State. And them and Illinois are kind of our two favorites to watch.
Good watchables.
You gotta turn on the TV for those games.
Yes. And then that bottom half of that bracket, it is just upset city here in the Midwest. We got the Aztecs making it all the way to the Elite Eight against the Fighting Illini. But then, underneath their game, the West Virginia Morehead State game, and this was one of my upset picks. Morehead State, I was taking them over the Mountaineers. And I have this funny feeling about the Mountaineers in that game. I usually have a 3-14 or a 4-13 upset, and that's one that I'm taking with for this bracket.
I mean, my grandpa went to Morehead State. Why not?
Yeah, exactly. I don't even know what their mascot is, but go Morehead. Eagles, go Morehead Eagles. Shout out to Molly Klinger for the Eagles. Shout out there. In that bottom half, we got Rutgers taking the 7-10 matchup with the upset. Houston wins their first game, but then Rutgers upsets the Cougars. I believe they're the Cougars.
Yeah, they're the Cougars.
And the Rutgers gets to play the Aztecs from San Diego State in the Sweet 16. And why are you so big on Rutgers here, Ryan?
Really just because they're Big Ten. And I think same thing with Maryland, where it's like they're playing better competition. Houston is never a team I like to bet on. They haven't really been super quality ever since Phi Slamma Jamma. They've never really put together a big run, and that's the 80s.
Yep, and for some of those who don't know who that is, it's Hakeem Olajuwon.
I think it was back when he's Akeem Olajuwon before he had the H.
Exactly, before he had that H on there.
So I like them. I like Rutgers, the Big Ten team, and another thing I was going to say is, even if you have them beating Rutgers, I think they lose to San Diego State. And Other thing I was going to say, West Virginia, even if you think Morehead State loses, I don't think West Virginia beats San Diego State. I think West Virginia's just not that great. And that's coming from a guy who enjoys West Virginia. I own some West Virginia t-shirts. I kind of like them, but whatever.
Moving on. Just to recap, in the Final Four, out of the West, Gonzaga, East, Alabama, South, Baylor, and Midwest, Illinois. And our Final Four matchup, the first one, the Zags versus Crimson Tide, we got Alabama taking that, and we had an argument about this one because I went in favor of Alabama. Ryan wanted to go for the Zags.
Oh man, that'll be a good game. I don't even know which one to pick. I'm fine with going Alabama, and I think I'd rather see Alabama.
I would
Gonzaga does have Final Four loss written on them, I will say.
Yeah,
because
I think they get there at least. It's not a lost season.
Yes, most undefeated teams lose in the Final Four, though. They don't make it to the national title.
Yep.
And because the other thing is that this might sound dumb, but like the tournament's obviously a marathon. It's not a sprint. You got to be a team that can
withstand the test of time.
And they are an undefeated team everybody's gonna be gunning for them. Yep. And they run a 7-8 man rotation. Illinois is running like 10, 12 guys. Illinois is flipping them out like it's going out of style.
Yeah.
So
it doesn't help that Georgie, when he comes in for Kofi, always is in foul trouble. So you got to add another man to the rotation there.
And I mean, Williams is an absolute sharpshooter.
Yeah.
I just can't stop telling Illinois. They're great.
We're going on to Illinois anyway.
But I'm saying Illinois built for that. Alabama's deep too.
Yeah, that's why we put them both in the national championship. Because Illinois against Baylor in the other semifinal matchup, we have the Fighting Illini beating the Baylor Bears.
Quite obviously. You and I have been loving them.
Obviously. And they take on the Crimson Tide and beat them for their national championship they've been longing for since 2005, the Fighting Illini.
Has Illinois ever won a national title? I bet somewhere in the 60s.
That would have to be something that is briefly looked up.
Quick thing while you're doing this, shout out to, I think Grant Hill said it, but I'm sure Raph thought of it, Cup of Kofi. That is great. He's like, give that man a cup of Kofi after Coburn. He wanted to give the ball to Coburn. That's glorious, and I think they need to really push that as kind of a battle cry for Illinois, because that's pretty great. I think that's pretty funny.
And no, Illinois has not ever won a national championship. The closest they got was in 2005 when they were runner-up under Bruce Weber.
Weird thing about Illinois, this is a quick aside, out of the Big Ten teams, no one ever questions them being in it, right? Like everybody's always, but they are never amazing in football. They're always average.
Right.
And for basketball, they've had that big year in 2005 where they don't even make the tournament like that often.
Right.
It's kind of weird. And you and I are talking about them like they're the second coming of, I don't even know what team would be their second coming of.
Exactly.
Some team you and I both really like.
Exactly.
But they're great.
Yeah.
So maybe the second coming of, I'm trying to think of a team I really liked. Kind of like a really quality version of Butler. Those Butler teams, Gordon
Butler
Hayward's.
teams, yep.
Those are great.
2009, 2011.
I think they have more talent than that team, though.
Yeah.
That team was just scrap city.
Right. And Michigan State should have beat them that first time they made it to the Final Four. Don't get me started on that last-second shot I was watching when I was 10. So anyway, moving on. Out of these teams, since we set our bracket, out of these teams, which one's most likely to be the Cinderella?
I don't want to call Michigan State a Cinderella, but they would be a team that I would push to the Sweet 16. You're gonna hate me. Brush your teeth. Colgate. I think Colgate could beat Tex Tech in the second round after beating Arkansas.
They're not getting there because the Aggies are going to be there in their place. So
I think Colgate could be a Sweet 16 berth and then a big old loss to Ohio State. Really the biggest one, though, you and I both agree, Winthrop.
Yep.
And
I like Winthrop, yep.
I don't think it's likely, but I think it's possible. They upset Baylor, maybe. I'm not saying that I'm thinking that, but I do think
it's always a possibility.
It's a possibility. If
always.
anybody's going to upset Baylor before they play in the Elite Eight, it would be Winthrop. So Winthrop is a good team, and I think if I had to put money on it, they're the one. Them and VCU would be the two I picked to make the Sweet 16.
Yeah, I really like It's not really an upset here. It's not really a Cinderella because they're an 8 seed, so they should win at least one game. But I love Illinois, but I really could see Loyola Chicago taking that game and getting to the
Who wins the
Sweet
national
16.
title then?
Well, obviously Alabama. So that leaves them left. That leaves them left because they're runner-up. But I hate to knock out my own champion, but I just really like Loyola Chicago this year.
I think your Centurion is blinding you.
I don't know if there's really any other. Okay, I do. I really like UC Santa Barbara, even though we didn't put them in the bracket. I really like them.
Yeah.
I think I could see them getting to a matchup in the Sweet 16 with the Zags.
Fast offense is really the key to an upset team.
Yep.
Quick offense.
Yep. Well, not only are bracket challenges a tradition like no other, but another tradition like no other, the Masters on CBS.
Oh my.
And be prepared to hear that commercial every time you turn around the next 3 weekends, because that's all they play. It rotates between that, and then I believe it's nationwide. No, it's Allstate, isn't it? With Samuel L. Jackson,
Capital
Spike
One.
Lee, Capital One, Samuel L. Jackson,
And I love one of those
Spike Lee,
commercials and loathe the other. So
Charles Barkley. And if you don't know who that lady is dancing in their newest commercial, that's Gladys Knight, and they turn into the Pips. If you did not know,
yes, that was great.
Look them up. They're from the 1970s.
I
okay?
absolutely love those Capital One commercials.
Yes.
That's like one of my favorite parts of March Madness. Really adds to it. And I think it's kind of a genius marketing campaign. But for the tradition like no other, I get a tradition like no other for me is making fun of it because I get really sick of it. And I'm not poo-pooing golf, but can you not think of any other ads? It's
exactly.
Just, if it's a tradition like no other, you should have more reasoning than just that.
Right. And I shouldn't get on my tear on golf because I'm not even a golf fan either. But they just changed the rules to basically affect Bryson DeChambeau, who is built like no golfer ever. Literally big guns, really muscular. I mean, I wouldn't say, I'll say heavier, but not as heavier in a muscular sense. And they basically ban shooting from the fairway or something like that in their rules because he would just hit the ball with his driver 300, 350 yards more than any other golfer because they don't have any arm strength and they just don't want that game to change. But anyway, I'm done with golf because I'm just not a golf fan anyway.
Neither am
I'd rather
I.
watch, if I had to watch between tennis, bowling, and golf, I'm watching tennis all day.
I like tennis.
I love tennis.
I like tennis.
Love Serena Williams. So.
Oh yeah, she's one of my favorite
Yes.
female athletes.
So we're gonna move on. We spent a lot of time on the men's tournament. We're gonna
wait, one more thing.
Yes, we got one more thing.
And the green and yellow frickin' CBS logo, or
Yes,
they change
yes,
it.
they change it for the
my.
Masters.
I just
A
had
tradition
to say.
like no other.
I don't know why your CBS you know how much money they probably pay for that?
A lot.
Oh my!
But they get
put
a lot
that
of money from that event, so
I
mean,
guess
you gotta take it.
I'd put more money into getting the Super Bowl than getting the Masters.
But it rotates.
It's
the
a
Super
tradition
Bowl.
like no
But
other.
the Super Bowl rotates. That's
I
how it
guess
works
that's true.
with the
I guess
networks.
that's true.
So, anyway, moving on, we're gonna look at the NCAA women's basketball tournament. The top seeds were just decided tonight, about an hour and a half ago, and we have these up on screen for us to look at. And in the Mercado region, top 2 seeds. Number 1 seed is NC State, the Wolfpack. And then the number 2 seed is Texas A&M. The number 1 seed in the Hemisphere region, South Carolina, the Gamecocks. Again, the number 2 seed out of the Big Ten, the Maryland Terrapins. In the Alamo region, Stanford, the Cardinal, number 1. And Louisville, number 2. And the last number 1 seed in the Riverwalk region, UConn. And the number 2 seed there is Baylor. Now, Ryan, do you think... right now, obviously, I think the favorite is either Stanford or UConn. UConn has really been on fire, rolling. They were ranked number 1 in the AP poll, I believe, before this selection Sunday. Do you think UConn is going to run it back for a 13th straight Final Four at minimum and possibly a 12th championship overall?
Well, they're the greatest women's basketball program ever, But we just saw their coach. I don't know if I'm stealing one of your next points, but their coach has been ruled out for, do we know how long?
Gino Auriemma is out for the first 2 rounds with COVID-19, and hopefully that does not spread to the team, because if it does, then these streaks are going to be broken for the Lady Huskies.
I think they're a Final Four team. There's just one team I see beating them, and it's NC State. Because they're really, this is like the first year they're really super good. So they're just like, I like betting on those teams with that it factor. And I think NC State has that. If I had to put money on it, I'm going to put money on UConn.
Right.
But NC State is realistically the one. And, watch out for Texas A&M.
Yes, the SEC really represented here in this year's tournament for the women. They had Kentucky was going to be either a top 3, was either a 3 or 4 seed. I mean, they actually had they were pretty top heavy this tournament year. The Cardinal, Stanford, I haven't heard much out of them from the Pac-12. Tara Vanderveer, one of the winningest coaches ever in women's basketball history there. And then he also obviously got Gino Auriemma over at UConn. I don't think UConn will be rattled if they avoid any COVID-19 positive tests. I don't think they'll be rattled by Gino being absent. He has his 30-plus year assistant in Chris Daly to lead the charge, and I think you have that continuity, you're going to be good. But Lady Huskies are the team that I've rooted for the past 10 years. I'm going to root them on, hopefully, for another championship title. One of their players, who was the number 1 recruit last year.
Oh my, she's good.
Yes, Paige Beckers. She, very good off the dribble handoff, pull up. She knows how, she's got the basketball IQ. She's a floor general. Really like her. She reminds me of 2 UConn players of the past. One, Maya Moore, who actually has similar style play of her.
Maya Moore was my favorite player to come out of UConn.
Yes.
Still is my favorite player to come
Maya
out of UConn.
Moore.
She's great. She's great.
You can't top her. And then the other one is Brianna Stewart. And Brianna Stewart, forward, 6'4", different style play, but she's got that. She came in as a freshman and she won 4 straight titles, and I can see Paige doing the same thing with that leadership here of the next 4 years.
I find that really interesting how women's basketball, they have a pro league, but almost everybody, Paige could be the number 1 pick in the WNBA draft, but she's going to stay all 4 years, win 4 straight titles. It's kind of the thing to do, and I really like that about women's basketball. It makes it interesting. Brianna Stewart and Maya Moore are probably the 2 best players to ever come out of UConn for the women. So that's big for you to say that.
Right.
And,
right.
I think Paige is
Right.
What's so interesting to me about Paige, I remember when she was getting she got a lot of hype in high school.
Yep.
It's her best assets are passing, and you don't see that a lot of big recruits. Like with Zion, LeBron, scoring, but with her, it was passing.
Splash plays with the bigger recruits.
Kind of like this might be a weird comparison, but I'm going to say LaMelo Ball.
Okay.
Where you got that scoring ability along with the passing, and it makes you very entertaining. A lot of young people like you.
Yeah.
I think Paige is she's going to be a great person to get more eyes on pro women's basketball, because she's a really entertaining player. And I think a lot of UConn people will follow her.
Yeah. I think that, the UConn UConn fan base
She's cool.
is loyal.
And didn't they just get the number 1 recruit?
They did get the number 1 recruit for 2022. I believe her name is Azzy Fudd. I don't know if I'm pronouncing her first name right. I can't remember how it's spelled, but yes, they're gonna have 2 back-to-back number 1 recruits in there. I can't wait to see how the team goes on next year. I think it'd be getting even better, because I don't think they have any seniors this year either. I can't remember, or maybe it's 1 or 2 seniors, but they're going to be bringing everybody back from this year for next year, so it'll be interesting to see if they can make a big run.
Are you and I both in agreement that Louisville's probably the weakest out of these 4?
Yeah, I think I would agree with that. I would agree Louisville's the
We like the Stanford Sycamore?
The Cardinal.
Cardinal.
Yeah, that's their mascot, the Cardinal.
Stanford?
Yeah, that's a Cardinal. That's what the tree's called. It's a Cardinal.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah. So.
Man, I always thought it was Sycamore. What am I thinking of?
I don't know any sycamores.
I'm missing out all these
I
years.
don't know.
I don't know what I'm doing.
But I think it's going to be. I can foresee this UConn-Baylor matchup in that Riverwalk region. That's going to be a good game. Hopefully, they both make it to the Elite Eight there in the women's. Now we're going to segue into the NFL. Had a few headlines to discuss before free agency kicks off in less than 48 hours. I believe it starts at 4 p.m. always, right? It's always in the afternoon. So less than 48 hours for free agency in the NFL. First, going to talk about the second placers for last season, the Kansas City Chiefs. They just cut their starting left and right tackles last week. Ryan's a big Chiefs fan here. Do you think that was the best move by the Chiefs, or should they just try to restructure Patrick Mahomes' contract, which they're going to do anyway, and keep both those key pieces to the line?
As coming from a devout Mahomes lover and a Chiefs lover, even though Panthers are my favorite team, and this feeds into the Panthers thing, offensive line is very important. I know that as a guy who used to watch Cam Newton get the tar beaten out of him his last couple seasons in Carolina, and watch Christian McCaffrey be able to run through a better offensive line last couple years. So it's a wait-and-see move. It's risky because if it ain't broke, but maybe they thought it was broke. I mean, it did look pretty awful during the Super Bowl. And when all eyes are on you and you don't perform well, it's kind of, to me, it's a kind of like when kind of like Doc Rivers getting fired for the Clippers last year, where it's not really what you did was a huge deal. It's just the fact that all eyes are on you to do successfully, and then you didn't. So it's just kind of like, oh, well, maybe you weren't what we thought you were. So I think that's really what it is. Granted, though, those guys, fun fact, out of every number one pick since 2000, there's 3 Super Bowl rings. 2 of them Eli Manning, 1 of them Eric Fisher. So... maybe Eric Fisher isn't the best move, but I do think it's I think they better sign somebody good. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I'm going to say this is the wrong move by the Chiefs, because if anybody watched that Super Bowl, saw Patrick Mahomes scurrying around.
I think most people saw that.
From that Tampa Bay defensive line, who only rushed 4 the whole game, never even bought a blitz, and that line was getting destroyed. And I think the reason it was because it was missing both those bookends, and they had to have a makeshift line. I don't understand if that's your solution to pass protection to get rid of it. But that's my opinion. I know they have a lot of money, but I know there's a lot of tools in the NFL salary cap to try and restructure contracts. I guess I would have tried to work and see if they could keep their former number 1 overall pick and their free agent signee, Mitchell Schwartz, from the Browns as well.
Yeah. I mean, they just re-signed Shaq Barrett, who I think arguably should have been Super Bowl MVP.
Yeah.
Shaq
Not
Barrett.
Tom Brady. That was definitely a symbolic MVP.
It's like like I said, it's like the Oscars. It's a career achievement.
Yes.
Where it's like, well, you should have won this before.
Right.
Al Pacino. We'll give it to you now.
Exactly. It's just like, you're the first one to 7. Okay, we're going to give it to you. Make sure you stick.
Wait, we want to make sure you're the GOAT. Yeah. Here you go.
Yeah. But it'll be interesting to see what Kansas City does with the lowered cap, and obviously they're not worried about their line. They're looking to try and keep some of their weapons on the outside. So if you have a line to block, you can't throw to those weapons on the outside either. So on to America's team, the Cowboys. How about them Cowboys? Dak Prescott. Is he worth that 4-year, $160 million contract?
If you were getting Russell Wilson, no. But I don't think they were getting Russ. When you're Dallas, you found your franchise quarterback. It's what we're going to see of Baker. Where overall, is he worth that? No, probably not. But to his city, he is. And, granted, though, when you're the Cowboys and you just watch yourself give Zeke money and then him say, I got my bag, and sit back the whole season, you're definitely a little more wary. But, Jerry Jones is a big spender. I'm not surprised. And really, it's this. The Cowboys drafted arguably the 2 best players in that draft offensively. Is that 2016 draft, I want to say? Zeke and Dak.
Yeah, Zeke and Dak, yeah.
Along with Goff and Wentz.
Yes.
And Bosa. Those are top 4. So they
Wentz.
drafted arguably. I know you're not as big on Wentz. You and I,
AKA
when we
Prince Harry.
when we do our NFL preview though, we gotta talk about the Colts.
Put it. If you're not doing anything at home right now, put up a picture of Carson Wentz and Prince Harry Windsor of England beside each other, and you tell me they don't look alike.
No,
You
they
don't tell
do.
me they're twins.
They do.
Yeah.
But I mean, you're still looking at the Colts this season, right? We're not. I didn't lose you in my Colts fandom.
You did because old Uncle Phil left, the gunslinger. So
I still like the Colts.
not with Prince Harry.
We'll have to
He's
do
out.
the NFL preview. Maybe they make a good move
NFL
on
preview.
draft night.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Dak.
Dak. Yeah.
When they drafted them years ago, the Cowboys should be primed for what you would think is an NFC title at least.
Mm-hmm.
At least getting to the game, not even winning it. And they've never even been out of the divisional.
Right. Since '95.
So, yeah, within the next 5 years, if they're not in the Super Bowl, this was a bad move, and the Zeke one's an even worse move.
Right.
Well, if in the next 5 years they lose a Super Bowl, or even if they win a Super Bowl, we're like, okay, good move.
Yeah.
I think that's what it is.
Yeah.
And if they win a Super Bowl, Dak's the catalyst, not Zeke.
I mean, Dak statistically is one of the best out of is the best out of his draft, I believe. But just because statistics are there, it's what I say all the time, like with Drew Brees. The statistics are there, but the titles are not, and that's what carries the weight, I think.
Speaking of Drew Brees,
Speaking of Drew Brees, as I segued into that one, Drew Brees retired this year. Who's under center for the Saints next season?
well, Sean Payton's gonna, his adopted son Taysom Hill probably is, but he loves Taysom. He loves
I know
him.
he does, but I think he's more of a gadget guy.
Oh, he is. He is, and I think Winston is the move. You give Winston the look.
But he's a free agent. Do they have any money to sign him?
Here's the thing: they paid Taysom for some reason. They gave him a contract.
Yeah.
So I think
In
the
order
move
to
is this.
save cap space.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think they're getting Winston, and if they don't, they run Hill. And I think the idea is this: if you get Winston and it works, you stick with Winston. If you get Winston and it doesn't work, hello Spencer Rattler.
Right. Right. They definitely have a backup plan.
I think the guy from Clemson will be a sophomore next year. I don't think they can get him.
Yeah. I don't even know. I can't remember.
Maybe
his name.
Rattler will be a sophomore too. Maybe I don't know who they'll be able to draft next year.
Right. We don't
Somebody
know.
will come out of the woodwork. Somebody will come.
Yeah.
It's not going to be like the
just-
2013
it's hard.
NFL draft where there's
it's
nobody.
It's hard for this draft because it's very quarterback heavy.
A lot of the guys we've been seeing over the last couple of years are coming out right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Fields
Yep.
has been doing well the last
Yep.
2 years. Lawrence for
Lawrence,
3 years.
Zach Wilson.
Wilson,
Yeah.
like, there's a lot of guys that are older coming out.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, we're moving into my favorite segment, but first, a word from our disclaimer. This section is copyrighted by Pardon the Interruption, part of ESPN. There is no intention to infringe on that copyright of this segment, Happy Time, and any music associated with that segment. Now, back to Quinn and Ryan. Happy Time, people. And Happy Time, if you haven't watched Pardon the Interruption before, we give a happy birthday, a happy anniversary, and a happy trails. Okay? So, as again, I always have to start out Happy Time with saying, Happy Time, people. Happy 33rd birthday yesterday, Stephen Curry. Steph, the son of former NBA star Del Curry, attended Davidson for college ball, where he played 3 seasons and led his sophomore season team to the Elite Eight, where they lost eventually to the champions of that tournament, Kansas Jayhawks. Steph was drafted by the Golden State Warriors in 2009, been there his whole career, and has been part of the Splash Brothers with teammate Klay Thompson since 2012. He's a 2-time NBA MVP, 1-time unanimous vote, 3-time NBA champion, and revolutionized the game by exclusively shooting 3-point shots. He's second on all-time 3-point goals made behind Ray Allen, but one can only wonder how long that's going to take to pass Ray Allen there.
I mean, he's probably one of the players I hate the most in NBA history, but I definitely respect him, especially now that he's doing his Lone Ranger John Wick shtick, where he just beats the tar of the teams by himself and then loses by 5 points because his team's not very good. And I kind of feel for him right now.
Right.
Part of me wants to say it's karma, but then another part of me is Christian and not Hindu, so I'm like, I probably shouldn't. But I mean, he completely changed the way basketball is being played. Now there's hundreds of thousands of little kids chucking up 3-point shots in the fourth grade, shooting more than layups. For better or for worse, that's how it's becoming. He's going to go down as the greatest shooter of all time, one of the 3 or 4 greatest point guards of all time. He's going to have at least 3 rings. I mean, I don't think he'll be able to get 4. Side note, I would love it if he went to Charlotte and teamed up with the most watchable team in the NBA, Charlotte Hornets. I don't think he will. I don't think he will, but that'd be pretty great. But yeah, I mean, if you asked me a couple years ago, it would be a lot more angry of me saying things, but
because you're a Cavs fan.
Because I'm a big Cavs guy, but he's definitely one of the greatest ever. And that run of Davidson was really good. He's going to go down as the greatest 3-point shooter ever. Klay Thompson and Ray Allen, the other 2. So, I mean, what do we have to say hasn't been said?
Exactly.
He's been hyped up beyond belief. There's a joke my girlfriend has where during those days with the Cavs and the Warriors were playing each other in the finals every year, it was you either loved the Warriors or you loved the Cavs. No one liked anybody else. There was Curry and LeBron jerseys. That's all you had.
Yep, and I'll put a plug in for Steph and Aisha Curry's new show.
Yes.
Tattletales. I believe, is it the game show Tattletales?
Well, I informed you just before the broadcast about it. So if you'd like, I will check right now. Tattletales.
We're going to find out. Tattletales was a game show back in the 70s, and I'm wearing my retro match game shirt. And always at the end of match game, the announcer, Johnny Olson, would always say, stay tuned for Tattletales on your local CBS station. So it brings me back some nostalgia that Steph and Aisha are taking that over. So.
And I just checked. It is a remake of the old game show. So Quinn will have to be watching that.
Maybe. I'm not a big Tattletales fan, but we'll see. Happy anniversary! In 1912, Cy Young retired from the Major League Baseball with a career record 511 wins. That's 94 more than second place on the career list, Walter Big Train Johnson, who played his whole career with the Washington Senators. Cy Young spent most of his career between Cleveland and Boston, with a 2-year stint in the middle at the St. Louis Cardinals. In 15 of his Major League seasons, he won 20 or more decisions. In 5 of those 15 seasons, he won 30 or more of those. He has the most career innings pitched record at 7,356 innings.
Oh my gosh.
With 749 complete games, 3 no-hitters. He's one of 5 pitchers to have one in both leagues, and a perfect game, a complete. So you don't see that anymore in MLB, do we, Ryan? No. With pitch counts and pitch control.
Nope. I mean, he's the greatest pitcher ever, by far. There's a reason the award's named after him. And if Bieber can be half as good for the Indians as he was, Bieber will go down as one of the best Indians pitchers ever because Cy Young was so good.
Yeah, and I guess I should put 2 plugs in here for this one. Because Cy Young was not in the live ball era where spitballs and where you actually had to throw sidearm. You were not legally allowed to throw over the top. So it's a completely different game where you can compare to, one of the live ball greats of Nolan Ryan or Randy Johnson to how Cy Young pitched. Another fun fact for you is that Cleveland Indians, since they're being renamed after this season, it brought up the conversation about going back to their original name, the Spiders. Well, in between the Spiders and the Indians, their mascot was the Naps. So obviously, they were sleeping too much out there in the field instead of...
It's a daylight savings time, messing them all up.
Exactly, messing them all up. And finally, happy trails, the free agency for Cam Newton. Newton re-signed with the Patriots for a 1-year, $14 million deal. Last year, he signed with the Patriots for almost a veteran minimum deal as the Patriots needed a quarterback with Tom Brady leaving. Belichick seems to have worked with Cam here for what he has now. Cam looked like an old shell of himself last year because he barely was able to get the ball to a wide receiver on any pass. But with him being physically beat up, hopefully rested this offseason, and fully recovered from his COVID-19 diagnosis in October, that choosing to run it back with Belichick will be the best choice for the AFC East.
Probably running it back to a 3 seed. I'm just saying, coming from a not former Panther fan, still a Panther fan,
Yep.
but I'm coming from a guy who watched him when he was a Panther. He was my first ever favorite NFL player.
Mm-hmm.
I own a jersey. Huge fan of him. I wanted to see him do well with the Patriots, but apparently he doesn't remember how to throw the football. So I think he's lost it. I think it's a bad move by New England. And let's hope they're getting Garoppolo.
Or drafting Mac
Or
Jones.
drafting Mac Jones,
So-
because I don't think that's the best move.
All right. I'll close it out as Ryan begins us. We will hope to see you listening next week here on the Big Salad. If we're going next
We'll
week.
be back next Monday, every Monday.
Every Monday, we'll be here. Good night.